Welcome back to Travel Speak, the podcast that helps you navigate foreign lands with confidence. I'm Clara.
And I'm Leo. Today we're diving into everyone's favorite travel topic, food.
That's right. Episode 2, Food and Dining Adventures, is all about giving you the language tools to enjoy culinary experiences around the world without those awkward pointing at menu moments.
Oh, I've definitely had my share of those. Remember that time in Tokyo when I thought I ordered a small appetizer and ended up with an enormous platter of raw fish?
Your eyes were so wide. But what a delicious mistake that turned out to be. You shared with everyone at the counter and made friends instantly.
Food really is the universal language, but having the right English phrases definitely helps when you're traveling in English-speaking countries. Today we'll cover everything from making reservations to understanding menus, ordering confidently, handling dietary restrictions, paying the bill, and navigating street food markets.
So let's dig in. I'm already hungry just thinking about this episode.
Our first segment is restaurant basics. Let's start with making reservations, something I always recommend for popular places.
Absolutely. When calling a restaurant, you can start with, I'd like to make a reservation, or do you have a table available for Friday evening? Then be ready to specify the number of people. Table for 4, please.
And timing is important too. We'd like to dine at 7:30 if possible. Or what times do you have available? If they can't accommodate your first choice, they'll usually offer alternatives.
Exactly. And when you arrive at the restaurant, you'll need phrases like, we have a reservation under the name Jones's, or we reserved a table for 8 p.m.
If you don't have a reservation, you can say, do you have any tables available? Or how long is the wait for a table for 2? And don't forget to specify if you have a preference. Could we sit by the window? Or we'd prefer a quiet table if possible.
I always try to learn the host's name when they greet us. It creates such a nice connection. Last month, in this little place in Portland, the host remembered me when I returned the next day, and they gave us the best table in the house.
That's such a good tip. Hospitality staff really appreciate being treated as individuals, not just service providers. Some other useful restaurant vocabulary includes reservation, walk-in, waiting list, party size, and seating area, as in would you prefer the bar area or the main dining room?
Now let's move on to menu navigation, which can be challenging even for native English speakers sometimes. Restaurant menus can be full of specialized terminology.
So true. Most menus are organized by categories like appetizers or starters, main courses or entrees, sides, and desserts. In the US, entree typically means main course, but in some other countries, it can mean appetizer, a bit confusing.
Good point. And don't forget specials, those dishes that aren't on the regular menu but are being offered that day. Useful phrases include, could you tell me about today's specials? Or what do you recommend from the menu?
When you're not sure what something is, don't hesitate to ask. What is ceviche exactly? Or could you explain how this dish is prepared? Most servers are happy to help.
Oh, absolutely. I was at this fancy restaurant in San Francisco, and I had no idea what confit meant. The server gave me this lovely explanation without making me feel silly at all. It turned out to be one of my favorite dishes.
For understanding portion sizes, you can ask, is this dish meant for sharing? Or how large is this portion? This is especially helpful in countries where portion sizes might be different from what you're used to.
And if you're curious about how popular or unique a dish is, try asking, is this a signature dish or is this something the restaurant is known for? These questions often lead to interesting conversations about the restaurant's history or the chef's background.
Once you understand the menu, the next step is ordering with confidence. This is where I used to really struggle before I learned some key phrases.
Me too. For starting your order, phrases like, I'd like to order, or I'll have are perfect. For example, I'll have the Caesar salad to start, and then the grilled salmon, please.
And for drinks, you can say, could I see the wine list? Or what beers do you have on tap? If you're just having water, specifying tap water or bottled water is helpful. And don't forget still or sparkling in places where that's common.
Making special requests is something I do often. Phrases like, could I substitute the fries for a salad? Or is it possible to get this without onions? Are polite ways to customize your meal.
For meat dishes, specifying how you want it cooked is important. I'd like my steak medium rare, or could I get this well done, please? The common terms are rare, medium, medium well, and well done.
And sometimes you might want to pace your meal. Could we have a few minutes before ordering dessert? Or we're not in a rush, so please bring the courses as they're ready. Help set expectations.
I once had a dinner in New Orleans where I didn't say anything about timing, and all 6 dishes I ordered with friends came at once. The table was completely crowded, and everything got cold before we could eat it. Lesson learned about clarifying the timing.
But I bet the food was still amazing. New Orleans has such a fantastic food scene. When I was there, I made sure to ask for recommendations from the server each time, and I wasn't disappointed once. What's your personal favorite on the menu is such a valuable question.
Next up is an increasingly important topic: dietary restrictions and preferences. Being able to communicate these clearly can make a huge difference in your dining experience.
Absolutely essential. For allergies, being direct and clear is crucial. I have a severe nut allergy, or I am allergic to shellfish. Don't downplay serious allergies. It's better to be emphatic than risk a reaction.
And always follow up with, could you check with the kitchen if this dish contains any nuts or whatever your allergen is? For less severe intolerances, you might say, I'm lactose intolerant. Does this dish contain dairy?
For vegetarians and vegans, useful phrases include, I'm vegetarian. Does this pasta contain any meat products? Or, I follow a vegan diet. Are there any fully plant-based options on the menu?
Sometimes it helps to specify what you don't eat. I don't eat meat, but I do eat fish for pescatarians, for instance. And asking about preparation methods can catch hidden ingredients. Is this cooked with animal fat, or do you use chicken stock in this soup?
Cultural considerations come into play too. In some cultures, dishes might traditionally contain ingredients that aren't obvious. I discovered this in London when I ordered a traditional English breakfast, not realizing the beans were typically prepared with pork. The server was so helpful when I asked about vegetarian options.
That's a good point. Even dishes that seem vegetarian might not be, depending on how they're prepared. I've found that saying, I'm trying to avoid X for health reasons, sometimes gets taken more seriously than just stating a preference, especially in places less accustomed to dietary restrictions.
Yes, and always express appreciation when staff accommodate your needs. A simple, thank you so much for checking with the kitchen goes a long way. Most restaurants want to ensure you have a good experience, and showing gratitude encourages them to keep being accommodating.
Let's talk about payment and tipping, which can vary significantly between countries, even in the English-speaking world.
So true. When you're ready to pay, you can say, could we have the check please in the US? Or could we have the bill please in the UK and many other places? Or simply make a writing motion in the air that's universally understood.
If you want separate bills, request this early by saying, could we have separate checks? Or we'd like to pay individually. Some restaurants have policies against splitting checks for large groups, so it's good to ask about this upfront.
For splitting the bill when you're paying together, you can say, let's split it equally, or I'll pay for the food if you get the drinks. And don't forget, can you break this down by what each person ordered, if that's what you prefer?
Tipping customs really vary. In the US, 15 to 20% is standard for good service, while in many other countries, tipping is minimal or already included as a service charge. Useful phrases include, is service included? Or, I'd like to add a 20% tip, please.
Payment methods can also cause confusion. You can ask, do you accept credit cards? Or, I'd like to add a 20% tip, please.
Payment methods can also cause confusion. You can ask, do you accept credit cards? Or specify, I'll pay with cash. Some places have minimum purchase requirements for cards, so is there a minimum for card payments can be useful. I learned this the hard way in a small cafe in Edinburgh. I had this wonderful scone and tea, but they only accepted cash, and I had none on me. Thankfully, another customer spotted me enough for the bill and directions to the nearest ATM. People can be so kind when you're in a jam.
What a lovely story. I've had similar experiences. Travel really restores your faith in humanity sometimes. And speaking of kindness, I've found that saying, the meal was delicious, thank you, when paying makes everyone feel good about the experience. Our final segment is street food and markets, which I think offers some of the most authentic and exciting culinary experiences when traveling.
I couldn't agree more. Food markets are treasure troves of local flavor. Useful vocabulary includes terms like stall, vendor, fresh produce, local specialties, and homemade or artisanal for handcrafted foods.
When navigating markets, phrases like, what is this? And may I try a sample? Are invaluable. I've discovered so many amazing foods by simply asking vendors for small tastes.
Bargaining might be appropriate in some markets, but less so for food in many places. If it is common, phrases like, what's your best price? Or would you take amount for this can be useful. But always do this respectfully.
Absolutely. And questions about street food like, how is this eaten? Or is this spicy? Can enhance your experience. I remember being in a London market and not knowing that you're supposed to eat Scotch eggs cold. The vendor was so patient explaining the traditional way versus modern heated versions.
Food safety is something to consider with street food too. Questions like, is this cooked to order or is the water filtered? Can be important, especially if you have a sensitive stomach.
Great point. And expressing appreciation for local cuisine creates wonderful connections. Phrases like, "This is delicious," or "I've never tried anything like this before," often lead to vendors sharing stories about the food's history or giving recommendations for other things to try.
I had that exact experience at Borough Market in London. I complimented a cheese vendor on a particular cheddar, and they ended up giving me a mini education on British cheese-making traditions and samples of 3 other varieties I would never have tried otherwise. It was one of the highlights of my trip.
Food really is one of the best ways to connect with local culture, and having these phrases in your back pocket makes those connections so much more meaningful than just pointing and nodding, though I've certainly done plenty of that too.
We've covered so much today, from restaurant reservations to market explorations, with plenty of food talk in between. I'm starving now.
Me too. I think the key takeaway is that a little language preparation goes a long way in enhancing your dining experiences. Food is such a central part of travel, and being able to communicate your needs and preferences makes everything more enjoyable.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Most people in the food service industry are passionate about what they do and are happy to explain dishes or make recommendations. Those interactions often lead to the most memorable dining experiences.
Great point. What would you say is your top tip from today's episode, Leo?
I'd say learn to clearly communicate any dietary restrictions or allergies you have. That's non-negotiable for health and safety. But beyond that, be adventurous. Ask, "What's your most popular dish?" Or "What would you recommend for someone who's never tried this cuisine before?" What about you?
Mine would be to always express appreciation for the food, the service, and the opportunity to experience local cuisine. A genuine, "This is wonderful, thank you," transcends any language barriers and creates goodwill. And remember, even if you make mistakes with the language, a smile goes a long way.
Great advice. Next episode, we'll be talking about accommodation and hotel communication. Everything you need to know about booking places to stay, checking in and out, and making your hotel experience smooth and enjoyable.
Yes, we'll cover booking accommodations, check-in conversations, room requests, service requests, problem solving, and checkout procedures. It's going to be packed with useful phrases for every stage of your hotel stay.
I can't wait. Until then, I hope everyone enjoys putting these dining phrases into practice. And if you experienced any food adventures of your own, we'd love to hear about them.
Absolutely. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with friends who love traveling or are learning English. Food is meant to be shared, and so is knowledge. Thanks for listening to Travel Speak, and we'll see you next time for our accommodation adventures.